There is one mention of a place called St. Gregory's Well in Two Gentlemen of Verona, and because Richard Roe insists that there are no mistakes or simple flights of fancy in the Italian plays, he is sure it was a real place. So in summary, here's what Roe says. There was a St. Gregory's church, but nobody knows of a well. The church was outside the city walls, next door to a vast plague hospital, used during the Milan plague of 1576 to 1577. The hospital had its own church with open-air altar. Roe claims that if you plot the journeys of the play, they give you a route that encompasses St. Gregory's church and therefore suggests that that's where the well was. He admits that a postern gate mentioned in the play is absent, which obviously blows a large hole in his theory. Another big problem here is that part of the orientation of these journeys comes from the use of the word wilderness. He insists that a wilderness is never a word that would be used to describe a forest, and is never so used in the Shakespeare canon. Weird, because in Merchant, Shylock says of a precious jewel, "I had it of Lear when I was a bachelor. I would not have given it for a wilderness of monkeys." Monkeys, of course, live in forests. So much for Roe's confident assertion. Thus, Roe's idea that he can locate the well by following the characters' journeys seems to be seriously flawed. He's desperate to prove that the famous well was clearly in the grounds of St. Gregory's church, and his technique is familiar. First, he injects some hearsay at the beginning, as somebody's mother shuddered and said there was something horrible about St. Gregory's well, and then pays off at the end with pure supposition. Back in California, he receives a letter from a Veronese doctor saying that St. Gregory's, being next to the hospital or Lazar house, was where many dead were buried, and by way of some kind of conclusion, he makes the evidence-free assertion that calling St. Gregory's a well is simply a dark piece of Veronese humour. A special kind of well, containing plague-ridden corpses instead of water. Well, if supposition is okay, I will chance my arm too. Some half-mile from the globe, as the duck swims, was St. Paul's Cathedral, and until the Great Fire, there was another church right next to it. It was called St. Gregory by Paul's. I have no idea whether there might have been a well there. I've checked, but records are very sparse. It's not mentioned, for example, in Peter Ackroyd's excellent biography of London. It's perfectly possible, though, because obviously there were many wells in London. Or we could speculate, as Roe does, that the mention of a well is actually a little joke. Maybe there was a famous brothel there where you could seek a refreshment. So it seems to me not unlikely that the author was once more, as he does numerous times in the plays, introducing a local place as an in-joke to share with the audience. Maybe he knew about the Veronese St. Gregory's Church and couldn't resist shoving in London's grubby little edifice for the entertainment of the groundlings, who might well have walked past it to get to the theatre. This is all very speculative, of course, based purely on the close proximity of London's St. Gregory's Church and Shakespeare's habit of mentioning local landmarks, but actually less speculative than Roe's confident assertion, which seems to me to be based on bugger all. Anyway, if you have been, thanks for listening.